Rogers TV. This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hello and welcome to HealthLink, a program connecting home, community, and healthcare. My name is Carol Merton, and today I am delighted to welcome Jill Umbach, who is the Planning Network Coordinator for the Bruce Gray Poverty Task Force and Coordinator for the Gray Bruce Children's Alliance. And Jill, I hope I've got your title.
No, that's correct. Coordinator is just fine.
How do you ever get that on a business?
These titles come and they go, and they widen as you are. We've been 12 years now with the Bruce Gray Poverty Task Force being in place, and so what we do is very wide in scope, but is so much integrated with so many other programs that are in place and tables that are in place in Gray Bruce as well.
Excellent. Well, I'm delighted that you're here because there is so much going on. So I thought we need to get an update on all the initiatives and the tables that I know you're sitting at. But also we're kind of in election mode these days.
Mm-hmm.
There are some real issues impacting our communities that I'm hoping you'd be able to talk about where you'd like to see things go for our communities. So I'm going to turn it over to you to provide an update and take the conversation where you would like to go, Jill.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I like to always start off with something cheery and very supportive for our community. And it's really hard to do that around election time right now. But I know that candidates are out there shaking hands, attending all candidates' debates. So from the Poverty Task Force, we're really asking community members to think about some of those questions that we need to pose to our candidates to make sure that, that they are addressing a real systemic change around poverty reduction in our communities. So we have some trends that unfortunately are, with the economy as it is and the dynamics happening south of the border, it's really putting more pressure on our economy, and therefore we are seeing that the trend around, a lack of affordable housing, food insecurity, challenges with access to health care. I mean, those are the top issues that we are talking about and which everybody's talking about right now. So, we're not just watching the election go by. There is an opportunity for everyone in our community to be engaging. I just read today that there's a trend of candidates to do more door-to-door than participate in all candidate debates. And that really means that it's back on individuals when someone comes to your door and you have an opportunity to ask the questions, to ask, what are they doing around a guaranteed living wage? What are they doing around ending homelessness in Gray Bruce, or tackling some of the food insecurity issues, which is related to income security? And some of the programs that we have in place that we want to continue, like the Canadian Dental Care Plan, or the $10 a day daycare, or the National School Food Program. So these are things that are in place now. So what are our candidates and our parties going to do if they win the election?
Excellent. And sometimes people say, well, what difference can I make? And what you're saying is, the one thing we can do is ask the questions that are critical and important for our community well-being. And at the very least, ask the questions. At the very most, vote.
Yes, and incredibly important to vote, but also to be incredibly, a lot of people sometimes feel like the federal election is too much above us that we don't have that direct say. But in fact, our candidates do. And our elected officials are very much involved in day-to-day realities and day-to-day impact locally. The government has large Right to Housing Act. It enforces it. It's got a mandate to help with affordable housing. It has a mandate to be involved in ending chronic homelessness, not just in the urban areas, but in the rural area, right? So I think it's really critical. There is a national food policy that promised us lunches. Right now we've got places like OSHARE and other community meal programs providing school lunches. This is something that the government promised us with the national food policy. So these are at federal levels in partnership with the provincial, but these are dollars that get transferred down all the way down to our municipal level. And I know, Carol, you sit, with the city, but there is only so much money that we generate locally. And we need that matching money coming down from the federal government. So it's really important that we have our candidates in the hot seat to say, okay, where are we going to keep coming with that? Where do we need to put more money into at the federal level and support locally? There's so much. Daycare is a big one right now. It's definitely an issue for women wanting to get back in the workforce after COVID. We're still not seeing the numbers of women. There's still a higher unemployment level for women. And daycare is a big factor in women coming back to work. We still don't have $10 a day daycare. What we're being told is that it's about $22 a day daycare. But what's missing in the daycare sector is actually the provision of daycare. We don't have enough ECEs in our local area to provide. It's similar to our healthcare system, not having enough nurses and doctors to provide for the population. So we have a real challenge with that. And so not only do we need to get to an affordable level for parents, but then we need to have the people in place to be able to open or expand the child care centers to then provide that daycare.
As you're talking, and I certainly would appreciate you mentioning the various tables that you participate on and how you can bring your voice and the voice of those who are living at lower income or poverty levels. But, it just seems to me that we are in shifting sands, and you talk about, certain levels of income, but it seems as if the money doesn't go as far. And we talk about food insecurity, but when you go to the grocery store, it's even more obvious. How do you put a pin on a target when the target keeps shifting? And it gives concern for the seniors for sure. And then for those who, even on two incomes, just can't make it work. How do you address that, Jill?
Well, I think in particular, those on a fixed income. And that's many seniors, but it's also a lot of older adults too, right? So you haven't gotten to a pension stage, but anybody on a fixed income is having to look at the rising cost of food. And the other costs of living. Some things have gone down with the carbon tax removed, and so we're seeing a little bit of break at the gas pumps. But then we're seeing challenges with other products that that may have a tax put on them, and or just we are also seeing smaller businesses challenged as well. So we know that every year the United Way and the Poverty Task Force calculates the living wage with the Living Wage Ontario network, and this is what a family needs to live on: $23.05 per hour. But we know that some small businesses may be challenged to pay that. So while we can say this is the living wage, this is acceptable, we are subject to cost of living coming in. And once again, we will annually provide the living wage for our community. That will come out in September, October. But for now, at $23 an hour, not every employer can afford to do that when things are tightening and they're trying to stay open. So it really is product specific. We may also see an impact of tourism this summer. We may see more Canadians, which could benefit, or less Americans, depending on where your product is and who you serve. These are things that are happening in relationship to the border. But I think one of the things that we always talk about is it's extremely difficult to cut back in budget when you're already living beyond your means.
Yeah.
So anybody on social assistance right now, it's pretty tight. And therefore, that's something that we've advocated to the Ontario government during the provincial election, was an increase in social assistance rate, Ontario Disability, as well as Ontario Works, and the support that's needed for families. I mean, we've been calling for management around rental. A rental affordability is a huge issue. Our Rent Safe Own Sound Collaborative that we're a member of has been speaking to the fact that we need to look at rental properties, and that rental, I know a large number of the federal level programs are around building affordable housing and the builds, but we still need to look at, in Ontario, coming back to better rent control. And things have skyrocketed in rental markets. And the majority of people that rent are those who cannot afford to purchase. But it's not that we should send them into the buying market as much as make the rent affordable.
Yes, yes. And for sure. And I'm glad you mentioned about the Rent Safe project, because I'm hoping that you can elaborate a little bit more on that project. But we are having more and more, for example, seniors who have lived in their own home, where it's taken two seniors and their income to be able to support that home. All of a sudden, there's only one income.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to look for rental, which may or may not be available. And the rental is more than they were paying to try and cope with their home. So they're caught. They're absolutely caught, and they're fixed income.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so that, it can affect a variety of people of all ages, but seniors for sure have an impact on that. And it creates a challenge, but it can also create a challenge for those younger people who don't have the down payment now for homes and aren't going to be making the amounts. So the Rent Safe project, there was a final report that was produced not long ago, and I wonder if you wanted to just take a few moments.
Sure. So the Rent Safe Owen Sound Collaborative has looked at the rental market, and in particular has done several surveys with tenants and with landlords. And it's really looking at improving the communication between the two, understanding the stressors, understanding the housing conditions. We started off in a partnership with a research study with Queen's University to understand what the standard of housing was in the rental market and ways in which we can improve it. So we were looking at everything from developing mold bylaws, which have now been gone out provincially, but it was also looking at how to improve the housing stock, particularly the rental housing stock, and how to improve relations between tenant and landlords. Some of the recommendations have also been around working with preventative ways to determine if a house is substandard. So it's like, how do we retain it? How do we keep it? How do we avoid renovictions where somebody, landlord may see may be able to rent out fairly cheaply in a substandard housing, then renovates it, and then those tenants lose their place to live. They are supposed to be allowed to be able to stay in the place and have first offer, but sometimes that amount may be too high for them to take it. So there's various reasons. We also, Rent Safe also talks a lot with tenants with regards to how they may or feel around working with their landlord, letting them know about issues, particularly with water, mold, pests, things like that, may not get reported to a landlord because you feel as if you report something happened to the unit, you might get kicked out. But now what we're seeing is post-COVID is simply the rent control has been removed, it has been reduced, that control that the provincial government has, and it's really a open market. Competitive market on who can pay the most for rent. And as you said, there are people that have downsized and are looking, and they on, maybe on a fixed income, or they may be not on a fixed income, but looking for a rental, and they can afford to pay more than somebody who's on a lower fixed income. Very challenging right now in the market right now. We've seen an increase of people that are homeless, and both county, Grey County Housing and Bruce County Housing are working incredibly hard to house people, to provide funding for people, so that the rent is affordable through the housing sustainable budget. So there's a lot going on as well, with Indigenous people as well. There is some discrimination against who you may rent to in our communities as well. So we have to address discrimination. So all of this comes up. The Rent Safe Tenant Advisory Committee is made up of all people with lived experience, and there are a variety of people from across Grey Bruce. And then they've also worked on a Rent Safe Ontario level. So looking at how we can improve the systems, be more proactive, and try and house people with dignity, and recognize that people that rent need homes as much as people who are buying.
Exactly. So before we get into the trending, because you've alluded to it, but I want to expand a bit on this, because it really puts the finger on the fact that, there's an issue that's growing, not reducing. And that's why having a voice and voting is critical. So Poverty Task Force, what you're describing, you deal with survival issues, daily living, food, a roof over your head, paying hydroelectric bills, whatever. I mean, we're not talking luxuries, it's basic survival. So how do people help support the work that the Poverty Task Force is doing, or United Way? Is it donation funded? How can they help?
Yeah, so it's two-sided. I always say, if you've got a donation for a community, so look to the community meal programs, look to the programs that are happening in your community, the food banks, the community meal programs, the community gardens, to programs that the United Way, where I'm based out of, or the YMCA or others, where they provide utility support, where they provide backpacks and other supply support, to the social outreach services, to our SOS, which is mobile and working throughout Grey County. We unfortunately are not fully government funded. So we have to fundraise for all of these programs. And we have our community meal programs such as OSHARE, supporting schools to provide lunches, right? That is something which the government has been committed to do. So in the one hand, we want to feed the children locally. So we want to donate. We want to make sure that the water and utility services, the electricity is turned on in people's houses. So we want to support that. So we need the support to the nonprofit and charitable sector right now. We need donations of money. Quite frankly, that money can then be spread fairly wide. And at the same time, for every donation, I always say, ask the government why this program that we've been promised hasn't fully come into our area. Yeah. So why are we not fully funding all of the school nutrition programs as outlined in the national food policy, that we will have national lunch programs throughout? Some provinces are fully funded. Our province is not.
Yeah.
Why? But don't stop the donations. It's kind of like we've got to put on the socks and the warm coat, and we've got to keep people alive, and we've got to find them homes. And at the same time, we need to talk about what is the system doing for us? Is it providing the services it's promised? Is it providing the services that we are buying into?
And I think what you're describing is so critical for people to know. A promise has been made.
Mm-hmm.
It's meeting the basic needs of our community members, some who are really needing a lot of help. And we're just saying, why has this not appeared? Say what you mean what you say, and follow through, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're being given, at it's election time, and all of the promises are being rolled out again,
Yes.
as they should.
Yeah.
But we need the follow through. We need to ensure, that the charitable sector, which is very stretched right now, is not always filling in all the gaps, but that we really do have the government going through with their promises. I mean, I don't think I'm speaking too far out of turn, but with every election, there's a pause in programming and things like that. So right now, the programming is continued, but the Ontario budget still hasn't rolled out for even our local services, right? So there's always a sense of what will the budget be year to year. There are some programs that rely 100% on donations and can't always be delivered as well. We are hearing from certain organizations that, we're having to narrow things where we didn't have to before. And a lot of that was because during the pandemic, of course, we had a lot of funding that came through. And so that it was very positive around that. But at the same time, we've seen, a restriction.
Yeah.
We're also at a point where people can't donate as much as they did. People are tightening. They're making, choices as to where they will donate. And so then it comes back to relying more heavily on the promises that have been given to us by the government.
As you're describing it, the services you provide are to vulnerable population groups, but the organization itself is vulnerable based on this the funding model and formula, and the fact that you don't know consistently what you have to work with.
Exactly. And year to year, we're also hearing right now that volunteers, once again, we have relied heavily on a lot of volunteers for a lot of the nonprofit programming. Our food banks, Good Food Box, community meal programs, community gardens, all rely heavily on volunteers. And so there are less volunteers coming out now. And that's a combination of factor. We saw during COVID, things shut up pretty tightly, and we had a small cadre of volunteers. If you can't donate, you might consider volunteering. Because that is something that just about I'm hearing it across the board for so many programs that they're actively seeking volunteers, from Meals on Wheels with home and community support services to food banks. So it's really, really important. Consider if you can't donate any money, consider donating some of your time. One thing we have is we have less younger people volunteering. We have always sort of relied on the retiree community to volunteer, and they age, right? So we have a large aging population, which we take advantage of as volunteers. And kudos to all volunteers, but we do need to have the next generation coming in and taking some of those seats away from them and joining the ranks. Volunteerism is really important also for people to connect again. And I think Carol, you and I just yesterday were talking about connection, community, bringing people out from the isolation. And it's so important when things are difficult, when things are financially difficult and people start to tighten. Sometimes they stay home more, they become more isolated, but it's really important that you can turn around and connect. Community garden is a fabulous place. Here in Owen Sound, there's a new community garden at Ed Taylor Park, and there's the one at behind St. George's. There's lots of opportunities to get involved and to participate socially. as
Yeah.
well. So I think that people also right now are feeling the fear and the anxiety
Yeah.
of being so close um, to the USA, and some people are very much consumed by the day-to-day politics.
Yeah.
And when I lived in South Asia, we used to say we're always waiting for the elephant to roll over on us.
Oh, dear.
And the USA is like an elephant. We're waiting for it to topple or roll. And what's
Yeah.
the impact going to be? And it's really worrisome every day. People are worried about their jobs. People are worried about affordable food. They're worried that, what happens when we have these tensions.
Yeah.
And therefore, what we need to do is honestly contribute to something that's good.
Yes.
Contribute to something that has a better purpose, that is going to feed people, that's going to create a greater sense of community, and which will not allow us to get into the polarized politics that we are seeing coming from the South.
And I think for the health of the community, the mental health.
The mental health is so important.
I mean, it can be very traumatic when you're fearful. People live at poverty or near poverty, low income levels. Their life is fearful because where's the next meal coming from? And I think, it's an issue. We have just a couple of minutes, Jill, and I'm wondering if you would mind discussing the trends that you're actually seeing with food bank use, share volumes, calls in for help, because there is a trend that's happening, and it's not a downward trend for need, I don't think.
No, it is an upward trend. We are seeing, a large number of people that are unhoused. Our chronic homelessness numbers are fairly high in both counties. And what we are seeing in last year, November, December, shares meals, 212,016 meals in 2024. And that was compared to in 2019, they had served 22,000. Now they're serving that on a monthly basis.
Wow.
And we have seen the Family Assist Market, which looks at supporting families who get large casseroles, get food for 2 weeks. And it's a combination of agencies coming together to support them around housing, utilities, ID clinics, the Salvation Army's there with things, that I think we're up over 175 people. And it used to be that it was, we thought, it'd just be a small little casual thing that will support families. The numbers are increasing all around. And we're hearing as well with food banks that, there might have to be a choice. You might, people in certain food banks are now allowing you to come back more than once. In some food banks are now saying, okay, you can come back more than once, but then you might only be able to choose so many items as opposed to just a free.
So
We are,
yeah.
So just the fact that we don't
roll down here. I know
exactly.
Sent me the Carol, you got a stop message. Jill, I can't thank you enough for being able to come and speak to us today. It's so critical we're aware of this, and I want to thank our viewing audience for joining us today as well, to be able to learn about programs, resources, and services available to you and also to your family. So thank you, Jill. Thank you so much, and thank you. Please take care.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
With Rogers TV, you can cheer on the home team from the comfort of your living room. We'll head to the rink, the field, the court, or the pitch, so you don't have to. Tune in and cheer on your local amateur athletes on Rogers TV.
Are you a passionate content creator ready to expand your audience reach? Do you have unique stories, captivating hobbies, or special interests that deserve a spotlight? Rogers TV is here to amplify your voice within the community. We offer you the platform to broadcast your content to a wider audience.